Welcome, Pod.
Welcome back into TCM Pod. I'm Chris Mathis alongside Spencer Mathis, my co-host, as each and every week passes by as we engineer the football season, which kicks off, as Spencer and I were talking about just a few moments ago before the show started, very, very soon. I was checking the calendar this morning, and I saw that the Buccaneers play a preseason game next Friday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers right here in Tampa. So, I mean, it's right here. It's on the horizon. Football is back, baby. And we got a lot to get into today on the podcast. We want to say thank you for joining us as you do each and every week. And it felt like last week we talked about the NFL running back situation and all of those guys wanting to get paid. The committee of running backs that joined a Zoom call meeting, Spence, and kind of let out their grievances regarding their value, their undervalue, their underpay at their position in the NFL. And knowing that these players are drafted somewhat high and they play for 4 or 5 years at a high level, get a little bit banged up, or they have a lot of carries and a lot of yards and wear and tear on their body, on their legs. And then the team says, hey, you know what? We might franchise tag you at best, but otherwise we're not paying you. And they let them go, and they don't get the huge, massive contract that they thought they deserved. And a bit crazy to me, but it is the case around the National Football League. And, the running back position is undervalued, as we talked about last week. At least I felt so. Spencer doesn't necessarily think that's the case. But Jonathan Taylor, star running back there in Indianapolis, recently had his fits come out with the Indianapolis Colts and the NFL, as well as he's officially requested a trade from the Indianapolis Colts. And this is a star running back here after day 4, day 5, day 6 of training camp, requesting a trade from his team. And then the GM, the owner of the Colts, Jim Irsay, I believe, he's the GM, or is he the owner, Spence, of the Colts, regarding what he had to say? Yeah, the owner, Jim Irsay, went to social media and said, if I die tonight and Jonathan Taylor is out of the league, no one's going to miss us. The league goes on. We know that. The National Football League rolls on. It doesn't matter who comes and who goes, and it's a privilege to be a part of. And, I mean, these are some controversial statements regarding Jonathan Taylor. So this is really just the beginning of the story here, Spence. And I mean, this guy, Jim Irsay, he's a clown, really. He really is. So he's really going to ruin his team's future right off the jump with a rookie quarterback in, of course, Anthony Richardson. Now he's going to lose his tailback to either trade or he's going to be put on the PUP list, whatever it is. They're going to be without Jonathan Taylor, it seems like, there with the Colts.
Yeah, Jim Irsay has been an owner of the Colts forever. It was passed down to him. He's always had issues with the law. He's had issues as an owner. He's always running a problem with the players. And for Jonathan Taylor, after this last week that just happened with these running backs coming together, led by Austin Eckler on a Zoom call that was like kind of praised for some reason, even though they were just Zoom calling with each other and not really the league office. They got together, and for some reason this sparked Jonathan Taylor to want a new contract whenever he has 1 year left on his deal after this season, if he doesn't play this year, which is a threat for him now. And the fact that he missed 6 or 8 games last season, only had 4 touchdowns in the games that he played. And I mean, the Colts last year were a team that could only run the football, and he didn't look good running the football. So for him to go out there and want a contract extension after a season like that was not the right timing for him. Of course, it's a business. He needs that contract, but he's not going to get it, especially if he's with the Indianapolis Colts. So he asked for a trade. From what I've seen, it was a couple of days prior to the meeting that he had with Jim Irsay, okay? But before the meeting came out, the trade allegations of him wanting to be or requesting a trade were not released yet. Then he had a meeting, I think 2 days ago, with Jim Irsay during training camp, okay? So training camp's happening over here to the side at a football field, at one of the practice fields, and then you see Jim Irsay. He's got his van, his gigantic bus that he brings in. Irsay parks it, and he invited Jonathan Taylor in. They had a conversation. Ian Rappaport said it was about an hour that he was in there. Then as soon as he came out, those tweets, or whatever they're called now on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, those posts from Jim Irsay's Twitter or X account were posted out there about Jonathan Taylor, saying that he threatened to put him on a list. I forgot what the list is called, but if he's put on this list, he misses an entire season with no pay. And the thing with that list is, if he's placed on that list by Jim Irsay, the owner, and the GM, if he wants to go in on it with Irsay, then he doesn't get paid next season, and his contract does not go away. That means that next year he'll still have 1 year left on his contract with the Indianapolis Colts. And that thing came out from Jim Irsay based on the fact that Jonathan Taylor suffered an injury outside of football, outside of the NFL before training camp, didn't report it to the Indianapolis Colts, and
Yeah,
then
it was his back. He had a back issue while
yeah,
working out in Arizona.
he had a back injury, didn't report it to the Indianapolis Colts, and since this conversation has happened, and since Jim Irsay seems to be a very moody owner, is what we've seen, at least I think forever. I think Jim Irsay has always been a hothead. He's always been the second worst owner. Now he may be the worst owner, not that the Washington Commanders guy Snyder's gone. But as soon as that happened, as soon as he ended that meeting with Jonathan Taylor, he had that press conference, said that if he dies tomorrow and Jonathan Taylor's out of the league, no one will care. I think that this relationship between the Colts is soiled, especially if they place him on that list, because if they place him on the list of the injuries not being reported, then he can't play for anybody this season because that's part of the NFLPA. And for some reason, NFL players agreed to this a couple of years ago, is what Ian Rappaport was saying earlier today. And it's a tough situation for Jonathan Taylor. I honestly think it was a bad time for him to want a new deal. But the thing is that helped him today is Zach Moss, who is their second string running back for the Indianapolis Colts, was just placed on the injured reserve for at least 6 weeks. He broke his arm today in practice. So they have a third string running back right now playing with the new rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson, a new offense, which, I mean, if you have Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the backfield, I think you're set. So maybe a little bit more leverage for Jonathan Taylor. But if I'm Jonathan Taylor, I'm sticking to that trade request, because do you really want to play for an organization where the owner is going to go behind your back, say that you don't matter to the league, and also threaten to put you on a list where you can't play football for a full year? I don't think you really want to go back to that team, but he's kind of stuck right now, because if he's placed on that list, you will not see Jonathan Taylor for the 17-week season this year. And I don't think the Colts are going to be near the playoffs anyway, but this really takes away all their chances of making the playoffs, because if Zach Moss isn't playing the first 6 weeks, or first 2 weeks at least, since he's out for 6 weeks, I don't think that they're going to look good at all. And apparently Jim Irsay wants to start Anthony Richardson from the rip. And the reason for him wanting to start Anthony Richardson from the go was that Peyton Manning played a ton of college football and went 3-13 in his rookie season. So how bad can Anthony Richardson really do? So we'll see how that goes, how this situation with the Indianapolis Colts unfolds. And from what it looks like, it's not going good, but at least they got a new head coach.
Yeah, and again, you're talking about the list. The list is officially the NFI, non-football injury list, and this would be a bummer, as you mentioned. He would not get paid, and he even took to Twitter, said never had a back pain, never reported back pain. Not sure who sources are, but find new ones. So this is definitely over with. This relationship between Jonathan Taylor and the Colts has to be over with. If I'm either party, if I'm the Colts side or if I'm Jonathan Taylor, it's got to be over.
Yeah, and it's tough for Jonathan Taylor, because the guy that tweeted that out has been a Colts reporter since the 1980s, and he has straight connections with Jim Irsay. So he probably did experience some back discomfort at some point during the offseason, didn't report it to Irsay. Irsay found out, and he told his closest guy that's been a team reporter for the Colts since the 1980s that Jonathan Taylor suffered an injury, and this could be him getting placed on the non-football injury list, and that could really, really throw away Jonathan Taylor's chance of ever getting paid in the NFL, because 10 games played last season, just 4 touchdowns, and then not going again another season. This is the Le'Veon Bell situation all over again, and I'm not sure Jonathan Taylor was ever on Le'Veon Bell's level either. So we'll see how this turns out for him, but that's not good for Jonathan Taylor that he's got the owner and the best team reporter going against him. We haven't even really started training camp. He was there for 6 days, didn't even practice once. So not looking good for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, no, it's an unreal scene there in Indianapolis. What looked to be something promising with Anthony Richardson and his growth and his size and his physique here in training camp compared to what he entered the NFL Combine at. You know, you're like, oh, wow, the Colts, they might have something as far as they're going to compete. But now they lose Jonathan Taylor. This relationship has to be over. It has to be from either side, and I think that it will be. It's a matter of them potentially finding a trade partner. However, the Colts, I would not be shocked if they do put them on the NFI, which would be a real bummer for Jonathan Taylor, a star back in the National Football League.
Yeah, and one last thing is he wants a trade, but who really wants to pick up Jonathan Taylor right now in the last year of his contract unless you are the contending team in the NFL? And from what we've seen out of running backs in the last 4 Super Bowls, which we went over in the last podcast, if you have a good running game, it does not matter. If you have a great quarterback and a good defense, you're going to win a Super Bowl. If you have a good running game, it doesn't really matter in the playoffs anymore like it used to. And I think that that's going to be the way moving forward. So do you really want to trade away a second-round pick or maybe even a late first-round pick if you're one of the best teams in the league for Jonathan Taylor, who you're going to have on a rental for a year before he starts holding out next season if he gets to play this year? So really, Jonathan Taylor's in a terrible situation right now. And I don't really see an exit for him. Of course, it's going to be solved some way, but hopefully for Jonathan Taylor's sake that he's not placed on the NFL injury list that wasn't reported. That'd be very tough for him.
According to Jeff Kerr of CBS Sports, he reports a couple of teams that would be a good fit, potential landing spots for Jonathan Taylor. The Buccaneers at the top of the list, followed by the Miami Dolphins, that then trailed the New England Patriots. So Buccaneers, top of the list. I don't know if that would work. I really don't foresee that happening. However, I mean, it is unreal to think that these reporters are having the Buccaneers here in this discussion for this. And we have more on the Buccaneers here in just a few moments regarding their quarterback situation, because I've been able to witness that going on, the ongoing competition that I thought was a so-called competition here in Tampa at training camp between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. And you guys have to hear that because, there's some interesting takeaways from that. But Spence, I know you had something there on Jonathan Taylor and the Bucs rumors.
Yeah, to really close out the Jonathan Taylor thing is he requested a trade. We see how petty Jim Irsay is. Who are we to think that he's not going to go down to the general manager, of course, of the team who makes all the decisions and say, hey, we're not going to trade this guy. If he wants to sit out, he can sit out. Or place him on the NFL non-contact injury list that wasn't reported. So he's kind of stuck right now, in my opinion. And from what we've seen out of Jim Irsay over the years, he's a petty owner. And usually the GM is going to have to listen to him because he's the longest tenured owner in the NFL. I think he's been the owner of the Colts now since the 1980s or early 1990s. So it's a terrible situation for Jonathan Taylor. I don't think it's going to be solved anytime soon, not until at least week 1. And from what it's looking like, hopefully it turns up for him, but it doesn't look like it's going to, especially if you're owner of the team that you're trying to get a new contract for, kind of hates your guts. So it's not looking good for him.
Yeah, no doubt. It's an unusual situation here regarding NFL running backs, and I didn't think it was going to get any hairier, but it definitely has gotten hairier, and it probably will continue to get hairier because I feel like these running backs now feel like they're an exclusive group, and they kind of are technically. However, at the end of the day, they're a football player that gets paid to play a kid's game. They just have to deal with it and know what they sign up for. And we also saw comments from Melvin Gordon III, who said that he wishes he would have played a whole other position growing up, so he didn't play running back and get underpaid in the NFL. So I don't know. It's just crazy to think that, these guys have gotten, I do want to say it, so greedy over time with money, and they look at the quarterbacks and how much these guys get paid. But in reality, they're getting paid big time money to play football. That's a blessing in itself. And yeah, they do take a beating, but the running back position has always been known as one of the least lasting positions in all of National Football League. Not for long is what the NFL stands for. And we know that NFL running backs don't have a very long shelf life. So now you're just starting to see them paid that way. So, quarterbacks, they're not paid that way. And one guy that gets paid a lot of money is your guy, Aaron Rodgers, who you obviously have always appreciated and admired and loved hearing from on, the Pat McAfee show. I, on the other hand, have not been a big fan of Aaron Rodgers. I do recognize him as one of the best, and he's got some precision throwing and great mechanics, but I don't think he's in that Brady echelon of being a winner. I don't think he is necessarily a winner. He's got one Super Bowl over the years. He should have more than one. But you know what? He's off to a new start. He's still wearing green, this time with the New York Jets. And in order to make this trade reality, he agreed to move a $58.3 million option bonus to 2024, which meant that he'd be owed more than $107 million in 2024. But he allegedly took, nearly $110 million guaranteed on his old contract with the New York Jets that he just signed this offseason, and is taking a pay cut of $35 million to play for the Jets. Is this a new Aaron Rodgers with the New York Jets? And I did pause there with the new Aaron Rodgers, New York, with the Jets. Are we really seeing a different changed man, or is this a guy that's just trying to please the New York media on his way out, his final year or two of his career, and just shut up and play ball? I just don't have a real feel here on this situation with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. It almost feels fake, disingenuous to me. Yes, he did take the pay cut. I get that. But as far as being bought in and all in with the Jets, I don't know. If it sounds a little too good to be true. Why is he just now buying all in to the NFL at the age of 38?
Yeah. So the thing is think of the Packers over the last 2 years. The year before last, he won the MVP. The team was pretty good, but we knew once the playoffs started that the defense wasn't good enough to win a championship. Last year, the team was just terrible. Of course, Rodgers didn't play his best, but you look at his weapons. You look at the injuries on the offensive line. David Bakhtiari always saying he's going to come back. Didn't play till week 16. They just missed the playoffs by one game. They had to beat the Lions. Remember, they ran the tables with the Packers. I think they won 6 out of the last 7 games, but just lost the one that counted the most. But the Lions were a good team last year. So he's now moving over to the New York Jets, a big media team. If you're in New York, you're going to have a lot of press surrounding you, and I think that's good for Aaron Rodgers that he's on Hard Knocks this year, kind of getting indoctrinated into New York. But the thing is, think of the last time the Jets had a ton of buzz about them. Even the Giants, they're kind of just now getting the media attention back towards them ever since Eli Manning retired. Now they got Daniel Jones, who had a really good season last year, and you're hearing a lot more out of the New York Giants. But now the New York Jets also recognize that this was a window for them to make a big deal, and they signed Aaron Rodgers. So now you've got Aaron Rodgers with a good defense, good weapons with the Jets. And I think that this pay cut that he's taken, pay cut very, very loosely used here because it's all being transferred to next year and the year after that. They're going all in. They're going all in this year right now. The New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers have decided that if they're going to win a Super Bowl, this is the year. I think they're looking at the blueprint that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had in 2020, the Los Angeles Rams had in 2021, and now you're looking at maybe the 2023 New York Jets because signing a veteran quarterback, I mean, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. If he wins another Super Bowl, he's got to be top 3, top 4 all time. But right now he's top 10, maybe even top 5 in his career in terms of best quarterbacks of all time. If he wins one more, he's up there. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he recognizes 38 years old. He's not going to last as long as Tom Brady did because nobody takes care of their body the way that Tom Brady did, especially not Aaron Rodgers on ayahuasca and all that, more of a hippie type, laid back kind of guy. But he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and they recognize with the defense that they've built together, they have one of the best cornerbacks in Sauce Gardner. They've got a pretty good defensive line. They just re-signed their star defensive tackle. I mean, the team is set up to win this year. They've also still got Jordan Whitehead at safety, who was a Super Bowl champion with the Buccaneers. They've got a lot of players that have had a ton of experience winning games, and Aaron Rodgers being the leader is huge, especially if they can get a guy like Dalvin Cook. And maybe even now, if you're thinking about the Colts maybe trading away Jonathan Taylor, you may see him going to the New York Jets if the Colts are interested. But of course, this is more of a side thing. But that is where this comes into play. That pay cut, I think he's $30 million this year that he's kind of saving the Jets.
35.
Yeah, so $35 million. Think about how this comes into play. And Aaron Rodgers spoke about this earlier today. Think about how this comes into play around the NFL trade deadline. Whenever teams are looking to make big moves, like right before you get into week 9, week 10 is when the deadline is. So this is a big deal for the New York Jets because they're going to look to add at least one more weapon on offense. And if I'm kind of thinking about this, and the more I've thought about it today, the more I've kind of liked this idea. If the Las Vegas Raiders at the mid part of the season with Jimmy Garoppolo have won 2 or 3 games, who's to say that they're not willing to trade Davante Adams to maybe the New York Jets? I mean, $35 million, that's Aaron Rodgers' best friend. We could see that be a thing where Davante Adams reconnects with Aaron Rodgers in green again, but this time with the New York Jets and not the Green Bay Packers. So we could see that. And I think by week 8 or week 9, this is a team that's gonna see that they have a lot of potential. They're probably not going to be the best in the AFC, of course. I would say probably 5-3 by week 8, maybe 6-2 at best. But they're going to see that if they can add one more target for Rodgers, maybe even a new tight end in New York, that's a team that can win a Super Bowl with the defense that they have and one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And $35 million to do that. I mean, why would you not want to trade with the New York Jets if they got $35 million? Think of what they'd give up for the future in terms of just winning a Super Bowl this year. And I think the Jets are going to be a team that's going to be very, 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 very on the attack throughout the entire season, looking for trades, trying to sign people. We already see that with Dalvin Cook. I mean, we're week 1 of training camp, and they're already trying to get Dalvin Cook. You could see the chance whenever he walked through the training camp the other day to have his meeting with the Jets owner. So this is huge for the Jets, and they recognize that this is the window of opportunity. It's this year, and it closes next year or the year after that. You've got 2 or 3 years with Rodgers, regardless of how long his contract is, to win a Super Bowl, just like the Buccaneers did with Brady. And Rodgers right now is very talented. So we'll see how this goes, but I think it was a good move for the Jets, and I think Rodgers and them really got together here, and I think they're going to be set up for success heading into the 2023 season. In the mid part of the season and heading into the playoffs, I think they're going to be on a very big hot streak with whoever they signed as a big free agent or whoever they traded for in week 9 before the trade deadline.
Well, we do know, I like that theory about Davante Adams because we do know of his connection, his brotherhood with Aaron Rodgers, and he did get a fresh start with the Raiders. It did not go over too well last season with Derek Carr. I mean, he still put up big numbers, but the ultimate result of winning games was not there. And now he's got another new quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. And yeah, you know what? It would not surprise me if Aaron Rodgers some way, somehow has enough pull to talk the Jets into trading for Davante Adams. Like, hey, this is the one piece we need to go win that Lombardi trophy. Get me that piece. And I think they would have to do that because they've already invested so much into Aaron Rodgers. And he basically just invested back into the team by saving them some money this year and, back altering it to next year and the following season. So, with that being said, it would not shock me if they did that. And at that point, if they did get Davante Adams, that would change my opinion on the team. And I do think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're a contender. I just don't see them going super far in the playoffs simply because
it may be at the trade deadline. If they trade for somebody that they need, I think that they could be one of the best teams in the AFC. I foresee them being one of the final four teams in the AFC. It just comes down to whatever they add at the trade deadline. Because right now they're not beating the Chiefs, and they're probably not getting past the Bengals in the playoffs. But if they add somebody that could help them, I think that they're a team that could compete with those teams and maybe even make the Super Bowl. And I think whoever wins out of the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl this year. Just off the NFC doesn't look great, and if it's not the Eagles back in the Super Bowl, you're not seeing an NFC team winning the Super Bowl this year at all.
Yeah, no, I don't foresee that either. It's an onslaught there with the AFC, and good luck getting through that. And that's the thing with a team like the Dolphins. If they were healthy, obviously they're without Jalen Ramsey. He suffered an injury in training camp. He's out. He's going to have surgery. But even for them, a team that even if they did have Jalen Ramsey healthy, if they did make a playoff push, they're knocked out so early in the playoffs because of how difficult the AFC really is this season. And Patrick Mahomes is there. Now, I think one thing that people sleep on, Donovan Smith, former Buccaneer left tackle, that struggled last year, is now the left tackle for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think there's something there. And is it going to cost them a playoff run? No. But, I'm not surprised if they, lose a game or two simply because of the pressure on the left side and Donovan having a bad night. Like, I really do think that it is going to be a game changer for the Chiefs. And, I think any Tampa fan or anybody that kept up with the Buccaneers and Tom Brady's run would recognize that. And speaking of the Buccaneers, the quarterback, what else you got here on Aaron Rodgers?
Wait, one last thing about Rodgers is him coming out fiery this offseason, even with the news of what Sean Payton said about the Broncos offense last year. With Nathaniel Hackett, one of Rodgers' favorite coaches of all time. If you watch the Pat McAfee show for the last 3 years, you've heard about the things that he said about Nathaniel Hackett being one of the best offensive coordinators he's ever had. And Sean Payton came out as a head coach. And do you ever see a head coach of a football team, regardless of who they're talking about, talk this bad about another head coach? I don't think I've ever seen that before. And what Sean Payton said about Nathaniel Hackett was that was the worst run team of all time. And Rodgers was interviewed by Peter Schrags with NFL Plus, is what he's on now. NFL Network has kind of combined those two. Nobody really watches NFL Plus at this point. I don't think that's going to grow, but that's the thing that he's on. And he interviewed.
Good Morning Football, I believe, right?
You said what?
Good Morning Football, I think.
No, this is something. This is NFL Plus now.
Okay.
I don't know what it's connected to. It's a lot of different things coming on, but he asked Rodgers about the comments that Nathaniel Hackett said, and Rodgers was again talking about how good of an offensive coordinator Hackett has been. He'll get another chance eventually. Of course, last year was not good, but go back and look at Russell Wilson last year. He was on the same level that Deshaun Watson was with the Browns last season. Both of those guys were missing throws left and right. Of course, Hackett made a ton of bad decisions, but it wasn't the worst coach team of all time. And at the end of that conversation, Rodgers said, "Keep my coach's names out of your mouth," just like what Will Smith said about who was the comedian about
his wife, too.
About Chris Rock. Yeah, I mean, a big comment coming from Aaron Rodgers, considering that they play in Week 5. The Broncos play the Jets Week 5. That's a big matchup to look out for because they're both in the same division. Of course, the Broncos not on the same level as the Jets, but you never know if they could surprise you with the head coach like Sean Payton. But that's going to be a great matchup heading into this season. And you kind of like to see that fire out of Aaron Rodgers. He's usually more of a laid-back guy, doesn't really make these types of comments about other coaches or players. But, I mean, he seems to be coming out firing on all cylinders this season. And hopefully, heading into the next topic, the Buccaneers quarterbacks are going to be firing on all cylinders. And you've got the close-up view of that so far. Tell us about the Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask dilemma there in Tampa Bay.
Well, in all reality, heading into this training camp, I did not expect really anything in this quarterback competition. I thought it was all chatter, and yeah, it still is probably chatter. At the end of the day, I think that it's Baker Mayfield's job to lose, especially through training camp. However, going to training camp, and, we're going on day 6 right now with Buccaneers training camps. They just put on the pads yesterday. whenever you watch these two quarterbacks, and I went on Sunday. Now I have kept up, obviously working for DAE, the Ronnie and T Crash show producer. We talk Tampa Bay sports left and right, all things NFL, all things Major League Baseball too. We are in with this, and we have connections that talk about these things too off record through sources and whatnot. And I went to training camp on Sunday, and Kyle Trask led the way as far as reps. He got, I would say, 75 to 25% of the reps on Sunday.
Wow.
Now, there's not much meaning to that because on Monday they did put on the pads, and it was more Baker Mayfield on Monday. So it was like they were setting them up like, hey, we're going to give you a lot of work. Tomorrow you get a little bit less. It's Baker's turn. And, watching these two quarterbacks in camp, just from being able to witness Tom Brady last year at camp, I mean, it's sad to see. I mean, just in all reality, the drop is because my first year here at DAE and in Tampa, living in Tampa Bay, I got to witness Tom Brady, the greatest to ever do it. And yes, he was older, but he still was such a fundamentally sound quarterback. He was running the offense. It was fun to watch. You knew what you were getting. You could just feel the expectations from the fans, from the staff, from the players. Like, you knew you had to be at your best or else Brady was going to chew you out. And that's just not the vibe right now in Tampa. I think the vibe now is, hey, we're going to surprise some people. As my boss, John Momola, said, it's like, hey, let's work with what we got. Let's see if we can get the playoffs with what we got. Whereas before it was, hey, we're shooting for the playoffs. We got Tom Brady. We'll let him, lead the way. Now it's a total different thing. We have to see what they have in Tampa Bay, their offense, their defense, the question marks at quarterback. And the quarterback competition, I thought, they bring in Baker Mayfield on a really good one-year deal, cheap money. Baker, obviously, a very good college quarterback. He had one good year with the Browns, has been on 4 different NFL teams now in, 6 or 7 years at this point. So he's a career journeyman at this point, honestly. Unless he does something this year to prove us wrong in Tampa Bay, he's a journeyman. And this is probably his last stop in the NFL as a starter, in my opinion, if he does not work out here with the Buccaneers. And watching Kyle Trask compared to Baker Mayfield, Baker's height, man, it's a big deal. I'm a little bit worried. So I saw 3 consecutive passes on Sunday where Baker dropped back and the line was just so tall. And there was one time where I believe he threw it and it hit off almost a shoulder pad or a helmet of his own offensive lineman. And I'm like, what? No big deal. Let it slide. Then the defense put their arms up, batted down a pass. They did that 2 or 3 consecutive plays. And I'm like, I have never seen that ever. Ever have I ever seen that. And I don't know, and then so you watch Kyle Trask and no, is he great? No, I'm not saying that. Is he having a good year? No. Is he having a good year for him in terms of training camp? Yeah, he's having a very good year. Kyle Trask is an improved Kyle Trask. Is he a good quarterback? Not saying that. However, when you compare the two quarterbacks side by side, right now, Baker Mayfield has 4 interceptions through 5-6 days. Kyle Trask has 1. And Dave Canales made emphasis earlier this offseason when the Bucs made him the offensive coordinator. We got to have limited turnovers. That's how we're going to win football games. Right now, Baker leads the team, leads the way in turnovers. And he's made a couple of throws where you're like, wow. But that's with his ability to get out of the pocket or to roll. It's not like from what I've seen, again, I've only been to 1. Keep that in mind. From what I've seen, he's not been able, or I haven't seen him take deep shots down the field really, like consistently. And that's not saying he can't. Maybe that's the way the offense is drawn up. But Kyle Trask has surprised me. Baker Mayfield has disappointed me. And right now, I think if you were just to go off these two quarterbacks, didn't know who they were, and you didn't have any idea who got paid money to come in this year, I think Kyle Trask would be the guy. Now, granted, it's only day 5. Long way to go. Very long way to go. And they've only had pads on for 1 or 2 days. And Baker's learning a whole new offense. Everybody's learning a new offense. Still, the competition, if there's a competition, it's right now. Through the first 5-6 days, there is a competition right now. It is Baker's job to lose, I think, no matter what. As T. Kraz alluded to on the show, I'm in his boat on this. I think that it's Baker's job to start the year, and if Baker's struggling 1-3, 1-4, 2-5 through the first 6-7 games, then they make a quarterback change and they feel confident in it. If Kyle keeps up the same rate of play as we see in training camp.
Yeah, and I haven't been around training camp, of course. I'm here in Blairsville, but that's very consistent of what you're saying, of what I've seen on Twitter, what now it's called X, but that's the exact same thing that I've seen. Is I'm watching Greg Allman's tweets. I'm seeing Baker Mayfield intercepted. Baker Mayfield throws a touchdown. Baker Mayfield rolling out, does good. If he's in the pocket, he's not looking great from what I'm hearing from the fans, what I'm hearing from the media. Then I'm seeing Kyle Trask touchdown to Mike Evans in the red zone. a scramble up the middle in the red zone for a touchdown. I mean, it sounds like Kyle Trask is looking good out there. And the thing with Baker Mayfield is he has to be moving around. So I'm interested to see how this works out in the preseason because both of these guys are going to be getting reps in week one. I mean, in week one of the preseason, I don't think we're going to see either of these guys get to sit out like we saw with Brady through the first 2 weeks of every single preseason in Tampa. You're going to see these guys really battle, and you keep hearing that it's Baker Mayfield's job to lose. But if you're someone looking outside, is not a Buccaneer fan, not in the Buccaneer media, think of how much the Buccaneers paid Baker Mayfield. Is it really that big of a difference in how much they're paying him to start him just based off of the money over Kyle Trask? And another thing that I'm weighing into this conversation of who's going to win the starting job in Tampa is Kyle Trask. This is year 3. He's got one more year, and he wasn't a first-round pick on his contract. So that means the Buccaneers will not have a fifth-year option on him. So he's got this year and one more in Tampa. So maybe you want to build something with Trask to start the season. If he does better than Baker Mayfield does in training camp in the preseason, who's to say that we don't see Kyle Trask out there week 1 just based off of in-game performance in the preseason? Why would they start Baker Mayfield over Kyle Trask if Kyle Trask looks better? Because I think you got more eggs in a basket with Kyle Trask than you do with Baker Mayfield. Because if you go back, the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl in 2020. What do they do with their second-round pick in 2021, looking to go back-to-back, is what Jason Light said? They drafted Kyle Trask to be the replacement of Tom Brady. And Tom Brady's gone. Baker Mayfield's in the building, but is he really the starter? We don't know. And Kyle Trask could win this job. I mean, I don't really see a set quarterback right now from what I'm seeing from the media that these guys have already decided to go with Baker Mayfield. I think that this really is a true quarterback competition, and I keep hearing Baker Mayfield's job to lose, but is it really his job to lose if he doesn't seem to have won the job in the first place? He was just handed it. Why would it not be Kyle Trask versus Baker Mayfield? And so far, with what you said, Kyle Trask looks better, and all the tweets I'm seeing, all the posts I'm seeing, is Kyle Trask is playing better than Baker Mayfield through the first week of training camp. Of course, 5 days through, but preseason starts not this Friday, but the next against the Pittsburgh Steelers, is what you said, in Tampa. So, I mean, if Trask goes out there and performs in front of the home crowd, the buzz could be around Kyle Trask being the starting quarterback if he could do that through the 3 preseason games that we're going to see this year. I mean, it's going to be interesting, this quarterback competition in Tampa. Jason Light labeled it as a true quarterback competition, and I think that's what it is.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I know Todd Bowles is extremely high on Baker Mayfield, and coming out, they actually wanted to – the New York Jets, when Todd Bowles was with the Jets, he wanted Baker Mayfield. So he did all of his research on Baker Mayfield. Unfortunately, he went a little higher than expected, obviously, and they had to settle for Sam Darnold there with the Jets, and that did not go well. So I think that this is more of a courtesy to Todd Bowles than anything. Hey, this is the guy that you wanted. We're bringing him in to replace your quarterback. You're already on the fringe in all reality. If Todd Bowles has a bad year this year, in my opinion, he's gone. So why not set Todd Bowles up to where he's comfortable with the quarterback? He gets his guy that he wants to be the quarterback. And then if his guy stinks it up, then they take him out. And then it's, okay, Kyle Trask's show. Because I feel like with Baker, if you sign him, you brought him in, and it felt like he was going to be the starter when you talked to him, and then you start Kyle Trask week 1, I think Baker's checked out. Like, we might have a Marcus Mariota here in Tampa Bay, and that would be it.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't know the thing about Todd Bowles wanting to draft Baker Mayfield, but that kind of reminds me of Bruce Arians coming to Tampa in 2019 for Jameis Winston, and then Winston not being the quarterback for the Buccaneers in 2020 after he throws 30 interceptions. So we may see a same situation here. And remember, the backup quarterback in 2019 for the Buccaneers was Ryan Fitzpatrick heading into the offseason. They ended up cutting him, committing to Winston, getting in Blaine Gabbert. But, I mean, same situation here again for Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. And I guess I could see what you're saying there. Start Baker Mayfield the first 6 weeks like Carolina did last year. And if he sucks like he did in Carolina, he's out.
Yeah, and I think that's is what's gonna happen. Maybe they don't even give it 6 weeks. Maybe he's so bad through the first 3 or 4, and they hit. What's that?
Let's hope he's not so bad he doesn't even get 4 weeks.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, the bye week's early this year for the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pulling for the guy. However, I think that's the case, and that's why I truly feel, yeah, there's a so-called competition, but I feel like this is more of a preparation for Kyle Trask and the Bucs to know, hey, if we do have to take Baker out, we feel pretty confident. And one thing also about Kyle Trask, his confidence has really risen a lot this offseason compared to in years past. Like and we talked about it on the Ronnie and T-Crash show yesterday, he has more poise in the pocket. He stands up straight. He even admitted that he was more slouched in the pocket last year. Now he looks like a confident guy that deserves to be there. It's just a matter of if he outplays him and if Baker Mayfield kind of slips off. And becomes irrelevant with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, hey, maybe the Buccaneers run a 2-quarterback system this upcoming season. We get to see Mayfield in the first half and Trask to close it out. That'd be fun.
Hey, you know what? It would be interesting, and I told everybody I'd rather have the excitement and the unknown of Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield than Tom Brady coming back at the age of 46. Even though I would want to watch Tom Brady, as far as the excitement level, good or bad, I'm taking Kyle Trask and Baker.
Yeah, and I'm sure you told that to T. Kraz and the media, and they were like, man, I want Brady back because there's no in Tampa besides Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask right now. They don't care. I mean, of course, the media probably doesn't care how good the Buccaneers are. If you've got Brady, at least you're getting views. I mean, you're getting clicks on Twitter, whatever it's called, X now. Instead, you've got Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask kind of competing for second or third place in the NFC South coming into this season. But I understand because I look more forward to the future than the Buccaneers going to the wild card again and losing with Brady after he has a terrible season like he did last season. It's just a good thing that they moved on and a good thing that Brady decided to move on as well after the 45-year-old season that he put together last year.
Yeah, I know. It was awesome. I never in my wildest dreams thought that my childhood team would have gotten Tom Brady ever.
Of it.
What's that?
A Super Bowl out of it.
I know. But more importantly, just having the go. Even if they didn't win a Super Bowl, I would have been excited. So very cool that he was able to do so and do it in his first year. And we got to witness greatness here in Tampa. So really, really spectacular. That'll wrap up TCM Pod once more. Follow us on social media at TCM_pod, at L Savage Spence, at the Chris Mathis. Also, which L, in Spanish, same thing, same article. And also make sure to give us a comment down below, like this video, share it with your friends. It really helps out a lot. And leaving a 5-star review will also do the same. We owe you one. Thank you guys. We'll talk to you next week.
That's about it.